Michele Denardi Tamburus, attorney at law in Brazil and Brazilian business expert in Orlando, Florida, United States, to talk to you about some situations that involve the relations between employer and the employee, what rules they have to follow, some requirements, and what the entrepreneurs should think they have to pay to their employees during the period that this employee is going to work for the employer. Let's check. There are rules in Brazil that regulate the relations between the employer and the employee, and you are going to find the Consolidação das Leis do Trabalho, CLT, that represents a federal statutory law that are going to regulate all the relations involved employment. And we have the constitutional sources as well, what an entrepreneur will think when he or she is going to invest in Brazil, considering the elements that is going to compose the payroll. There is a minimum wage to hire an employee, and this employee must receive the salary each month, considering the 5th business day of the calendar in Brazil each month. And there is this minimum wage in Brazil, and each union from each labor category are going to define a different minimum wage considering the activity, the services that are going to be provided by employees that is affiliated with this union. Of course, some categories have their own unionized employees, even though the employees that are not going to be associated with a union, these employees are going to receive the same rights. So we have the full-time jobs that's going to be paid each month, and the part-time was included by the reform that the bill from 2017 brought to the system. And the home office as well is a new type of work that can be provided by employees to employer. And of course, there are lots of rules and regulations related to what the employer are going to provide to the employee in order to this employee can be able to provide the services to the employer. The employees in Brazil are entitled to the salary that has to obey the minimum wage, as well some unions that are going to provide some values over this value. Employee must work during 12 months in order to receive the rights to have 30 days of vacation. This vacation can be split in 3 times. 2 times can be split in different days and during different days, but it's for just one has to have 14 days. Each year, these employees have this right during this following 12 months. They are going to receive an additional 1/3 of the gross wage in addition to the regular wage. They have to have some additional payments considering they are going to do something different, go to travel, and another expenses, additional expenses. So the employer must pay this additional wage. The employer has to pay 8% of the wage that this employee receives each month in a deposit that corresponds to a legal savings account that's going to be handed to the employee when occurs the termination of the agreement of this relation of work. The employer has to retain money from the employee and from his own payroll. It's like a tax that the employer has to pay, and the employee as well, but the rate that the employee are going to pay is less than the employer, and all this money are going to be managed by a government agency that's going to be responsible for pay retirement, unemployment insurance. The employee are going to be paid in periods like holidays, when they have some leaves of absence considered pregnancy, bereavement, parental, justified absence like some sickness. In all the situations of leave of absence, this employee is going to receive payment. Even though some periods of the year are day off days, the employee receives the payment. The hours of work in Brazil corresponds to 8 hours per day or 44 hours per week. And the overtime are going to be paid considering the amount of the regular hour plus 50% of this regular hour. The employee is entitled to receive a 13 salary. Each year has 12 months. So you are going to think, okay, the payment are going to take place monthly. So are going to receive 12 salaries per year. But in Brazil, you are going to receive an extra salary. The termination of the employment relation happens when the employers send to the employee a notice of termination. This notice has to be previous to the termination. This period of time corresponds to 30 days. We have 3 types of termination, 3 mainly types. The termination that comes from the employer, the termination that comes from employee, and the termination that comes from agreement between both. These terminations can have a justified motivation or no justified motivation. A no motivation termination that comes from employer to employee creates to the employee to be entitled to receive the proportional value corresponding to the months that this employee works related to the 13th salary, in addition to the vacations, paid vacations. If this employee didn't receive the vacation yet, plus the 1/3 of the gross wage, is going to receive as well the period that he worked, consider the month. Do you remember about the saving legal account that I talked to you earlier? The 8% that the employer save each month in this account, that's not going to be retaining from the employee. It's additional payment that the employer must pay to the employee. That's going to this account, 8%. For example, if the employee receives 1,000 reais, the employer must get this value, apply the 80%, and is going to save 80 reais. Reais is the currency that we have in Brazil nowadays. And if you're going to do the exchange to dollars, you have to consider like 6 per one, R$ 6 by $1. You have a amount, and the employer must pay a fee, additional fee that's considered penalty because he fired the employee of 50% over considering the amount that is saved. For example, if this employee has R$ 10,000, this employee this employee is dismissed. So the employer have to save additional 40% in benefit of the employee. What it means? Additional R$ 4,000, and 10% of this 50%, what is related to R$ 1,000, is going to be paid to the government. If the employee, without any cause, asked to leave company, he didn't have this right that is going to receive the additional correspondent of the 13th salary proportionally, and vacations proportional as well, and the salary, but not this penalty because the employee asked to leave. But if the employee asked to leave because of the employer didn't give him his rights, it's a employer fault. So the same rights that I talk about when the employer dismisses without cause the employee, and the termination based on the fault of the employee. If employee, for example, didn't follow the rules of the company, if the employee is unsubordinated, the employer can dismiss the employee without pay all these rights that I mentioned before, only the salary. The final way that they can terminate is consider agreement. So if the employer and employee have agreement, so the employer are going to pay less money, consider the penalty of 40 is going to be 20%, and the employee can have access to this account, this legal saving account, because that's called the FGTS. The FGTS means Fundo de Garantia por Tempo de Serviço. It's a saving account, a legal saving account that the employee only can have access when he's dismissed without justification by the employer. But if he asks to leave, he wait 3 years in order to have access to this account. And if they achieve agreement, this employee is going to have access to this account. We know for a fact that the law in Brazil is favor to the employee, and it's are going to generate some concerns when the entrepreneur think about how much an employee will cost to the company. You should always be high informed, hire contractors, hire lawyers that is going to put on the table all the situations that your company are going to face. I explained briefly some rights that the employee is entitled to in Brazil. The company that is interested to go to Brazil, to do business in Brazil, to develop some activity in Brazil, talk to some accountants and lawyers in Brazil to have a full idea of how they can hire these employees, follow the rules, and don't miss any little things that can going to revert in financial loss for the company. I believe you can have a good understanding of some topics. It's very extensive, it's complex, but you can solve lots of situations considering the knowledge of the system. Hope you enjoy the video.